Since they clear the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Bun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Seen Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hey there, and welcome to the Punch Show. Thanks for those who are joining on a very special Saturday. I don't normally do this on weekends, but in case you didn't know, last night the Republicans, I think it was completely partisan voting result, extended the Trump tax cuts for billionaires, and you know, that says it all, right? And I've been thinking about this with the tariffs versus the tax cuts, right? The tax cuts for billionaires are, I mean, they're not just for billionaires. They're also for people that just are worth hundreds of millions. It's not just billionaires that benefit, but mostly it's the wealthy, right? The people that are never, ever, ever going to have to worry about how much money they have again. All right, I'm going to do something here because it's going to look kind of weird, but I'm going to turn off my background and I'm going to have my green screen behind me, but it's like I've got all these holes in my head and my hand and everything, and I've got to figure this out. But anyway, I'm just going to turn off my background right now. If I can figure out how. Okay, there we go. All right, so there's my green screen. But anyway, I've got to get the lighting figured out or something. Anyway, hey, Salam. Thanks for joining. So let's talk about the billionaire tax cuts versus the tariffs, okay? Because this is something I think that the media is completely missing, and it's infuriating to me how they just bypass this whole kind of nonsense. The tax cuts for billionaires are, obviously for billionaires, and they are actually it's a progressive tax. And for those who never went to high school or whatever, which apparently a lot of these red hat wearing maternal fornicators never went to high school or had an economics or government class of any kind, they don't know that a progressive tax means that you tax the wealthy more than you tax the poor. And there are reasons for that. One, the wealthy can afford it more, right? Like if Elon Musk gets taxed more than the person that is making $20,000 a year and has to choose between her rent and her son's medication, she has to make choices with the money she is spending on taxes, or because of the money she's spending on taxes. Elon Musk does not have to make choices. If you taxed him $100 billion, it would not make a single difference in a single choice he would have to make. He would not have to buy a different house. He would not have to decide whether or not he could afford the good butter or margarine. He wouldn't have to decide what kind of bread to buy. He wouldn't have to decide between getting steak and ground beef. He wouldn't have to make choices. Most of us have to make choices in our life. We find the shirt we like, and then we're like, we look at the price tag. Elon Musk doesn't have to look at a price tag. Progressive taxes tax people that don't have to look at the price tag more because they don't have to look at the price tag. And that's fair. And you will have people say, well, that's not fair. Yes, it is fair. And here's why it's fair. It's fair because not only do they have more, they benefit more from taxes. All right, let me explain that. First of all, who's going to lose more, say, if the country gets invaded? Me or Elon Musk? Elon Musk has $500 billion at stake. I don't. So Elon Musk is going to lose more if there's like an invasion or something. So he benefits more from the military on a personal level than I do. He benefits more from the fire department than I do, because if his house burns down, it's going to cost him more money than if my house burns down. He benefits more from the police because the police are going to protect his Tesla lots, and I don't have Tesla lots to protect. So progressive taxes are actually fair because the more money you make, the more money you benefit. And the more money you benefit from taxes, the more money you should have to pay. There's not like really a hard thing to comprehend there. But we have trouble comprehending that because, it's just, well, why should the tax wealthy have to pay so much? And the wealthy don't even pay that much. We actually already are closer to a flat tax than most people realize. And flat taxes are not fair. We talk about flat taxes like they're fair, but they're not fair. Because what happens is you get people, like, the more money you make, the more accountants you can afford, and the more money you can leverage. That's why Donald Trump and Elon Musk don't even pay taxes anymore. You have billionaires that aren't even paying taxes, and they're getting tax cuts. How that works, I don't even know. But that's where we're at. And meanwhile, we're taking away these tax cuts for billionaires, and we're putting it on. We're compensating for that through tariffs. Now, tariffs, they will say, they're not a tax, but they are a tax. They're an excise. Well, they're not an excise. An excise tax is anyway, they're an import tax, and they're paid by the importer, and then they get passed on by the to the consumer eventually, and it's called there's something called a pass-through rate. And a pass-through rate is, all right, let me kind of backtrack here. I was not planning on having a show. I just had the need to rant, so I came on here to rant. So sorry if this is not all well choreographed. You have something called a pass-through rate. And a pass-through rate is the rate at which the tariff gets passed through to the customer. So when a tariff is assigned, what happens is that the person who imports the goods, like, so if you're importing $1 million worth of whatchamacallits, and there's a 25% tariff on whatchamacallits, then you, as the importer, the owner of Kelly's Imports, I have to go down to the shipping yard before the whatchamacallits get released to the general public. I have to get them out of the shipping yard, I have to pay customs the $250,000 for the 25% tariff on that, right? So now it means that the $1 million that I spent on those whatchamacallits now cost me $1,250,000, which means when I pass them on to the millionaires, or to the middleman, I'm going to have to sell them for more. I'm going to have to sell them for like $1.5 million so I can make $250,000 off on it, or whatever. And then the middleman, they're going to have to, before they sell it to Walmart, they're going to mark up the price because they need to make money on it. People aren't in business to break even or lose money, right? So eventually what happens is it gets to Walmart, and then Walmart sells each individual whatchamacallit at, 30, 35 cents more than what it would have been because of all these markups. And all those markups end up getting paid by the person buying the whatchamacallit, which is the consumer. Okay. And so it's essentially a kind of sales tax. And a sales tax is what we call a regressive tax. A regressive tax means that the less money you make, the higher percentage of income you pay to your taxes, which is why sales taxes are the worst kind of taxes that there are, and it's why red states depend on them the most. Texas does not have an income tax, but they have a sales tax, and they rely on sales taxes and property taxes because those are more regressive. And they're more regressive because if, like, let's say you make $100,000 a year, or, well, let's say you make $50,000 a year and you have a $200,000 house. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, but let's say that's the case. Or let's say you make $50,000 a year and you rent. Whoever you rent the house from is paying property taxes on that house, and they are then passing that on to you through rent. And because of that, and because a rent is a higher percentage of your income, that means a higher percentage of your income is being paid in taxes than the person who has all kinds of money left over to invest at the end of the day. And so, that's what we call a regressive tax. Or when you're buying a sales tax, if you make $20,000 a year, you're not sitting there with your money left over at the end of the month trying to figure out how to invest it. If you make $20,000 a month, you are spending every dime you make, which means that, depending on what state you live in and what gets taxed sales taxes, every dime you make is getting sales taxed. But if you're investing money and you're getting capital gains and stuff like that, and you're reinvesting money, every dollar you make is not getting taxed. So because every dollar you're making is not getting taxed, and like some of these sales taxes are like 7, 10, 12%. So you're making more money, but a lower percentage of your money is going towards taxes if you're wealthy than if you're poor. All right. So what we're now, and like with Social Security taxes, for instance, if you make so much money, Social Security taxes stop. You have to stop paying into Social Security at a certain point. So you end up and through tricks of math and whatnot, the Republicans have made it so that basically your Social Security taxes are just treated like any other tax, and they're just kind of all lumped into the same thing. It used to be kept separate so that we wouldn't run out of Social Security funding, but under Reagan and Gingrich and that kind of crap, this all went away. All right. So back to today. Like, I'm sorry for rambling, but it feels like I need to ramble a little bit to set this up. Tariffs are a regressive tax, and income taxes are a progressive tax. When we are simultaneously cutting taxes for billionaires while raising tariffs, we are shifting the tax burden from the rich to the poor. They talk about wealth transfer, but wealth transfer should happen. It just shouldn't happen from the wealthy to the poor. The poor should not have to pay more. The wealthy should have to pay more because they benefit more, and because they have more, and because it costs them less. But here we are talking about this trade war, and it's like this could end up being the largest tax increase in American history on the poor and middle class. It's going to be a huge tax increase. And it will never be seen as a tax increase, because when you go to the Walmart and you buy the shirt that used to cost you $2 and now it costs you $2.50 or whatever, That extra 50 cents is just considered retail cost. It's not considered a tax, even though you're paying more money because of a tariff, which is a tax. But you don't get to count that as a tax. So if you're like, say, a nonprofit company, you can't pay $2 instead of the $2.50 that you would if it were a sales tax. You don't get a sales tax waiver. You don't get, there's no such thing as a tariff tax waiver. So you end up paying more of your money if you're poor or if you're middle class than if you're rich under this new GOP strategy that has passed the Senate last night. And, you know, I'm not going to defend the Democrats here, but I'm going to say that I think the Democrats voted universally against it. I think that this is one of those things where you can 100% entirely blame it only on the GOP. I'm not saying the Democrats are perfect in everything they do, so don't get up all in my mentions and yelling about how the Democrats aren't perfect or what, you know, even Fetterman voted against it. So, like, we don't need all, you know, like, why don't we just blame the Republican for what the Republicans do for once? This is, and so I started thinking about all of this last night. I could not sleep. I've gotten like 3 hours of sleep last night. This pissed me off so much. And so I was thinking about it, and I was was like, is this on purpose? Like, what if the whole tanking the stock market is on purpose? What if it's a deliberate thing? Is that possible? Is it feasible that they would actually do that? And then I thought, well, if they would, why would they? What would be the gain? What would be the benefit? And the benefit would be people selling their stocks, right? So let's say you're Elon Musk or Donald Trump or, you know, billionaire Bob, and you can weather the hits to, you know, your stock portfolio, and you have all kinds of extra money lying around, right? So you're worth like $5 billion, and you have an extra billion that you can invest, and everybody's selling. So you buy that extra billion, knowing that eventually someday it will go back up, right? You're not worried about the temporary losses. You're just about the long-term gains, because you don't need that temporary money. You don't need those stocks right now. You're not thinking about retiring in 2 years. And if you lost that $1 billion, oh well, you could lose $1 billion and it wouldn't even matter. So, but if you're working, just, you know, you make $85,000 a year between you and your spouse, you have this, and you have a little bit of money to invest, and you've been putting money into your 401k, and your 401k's just tanking, and you're sitting there looking at, you're going to have to work 2 extra years of your life, or like, this is your retirement fund. This is money that you are going to need to live on so that you can retire and not work your entire life until you die. Like, that money matters more to you than it does to Bob the billionaire. But you sell. You need to sell before you lose your life savings. And then Bob owns that stock that you were investing in. And so now when it goes back up, Bob has more money and you have less money. And so what's happening is it's more transferring of the wealth from the wealthy, from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. What's going on with the tax cuts? Transferring wealth from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. What's going on with the tariffs? Transferring wealth from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. So about the tariffs thing, you notice rich people aren't worried about it, because Why do they have to worry? It's like, are they worried that the cost of their clothing is going to go up a couple of dollars? All right. No, they're not. But for us that, are living on paychecks, yeah, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. So, trying to think about like how much I want to do here. I don't want to come in and do a big long soliloquy. If anybody has anything to say, go ahead. But so like as I was thinking about this, I just keep thinking, like, let's say you're president of the United States, and your goal was to destabilize the country as much as possible for whatever reason. What would you do? And I keep thinking, everything I would do is exactly what Trump is doing. I would, I would, like with the economy, do everything I could to destabilize the economy, to destroy the confidence of the consumer, to wreck the stock market. And the best way to do that is to sign massive tariffs while lowering taxes for the rich. Another thing you would do is you would go in and do what he's doing with immigration, which is another thing we're not talking about. And one of the things he does is he just overloads us with stupidity, so that no matter what you talk about is not the thing we really need to talk about. But so, like, let's talk about what he's doing right now with immigration and how he's terrifying any undocumented worker. And what's the big fucking deal about undocumented workers anyway? Like, if you want to go pick grapes, go pick grapes. Undocumented workers aren't keeping you from picking grapes. I'm sure if you moved to California as an American citizen, you could get a job as a grape picker or a strawberry picker in Texas or whatever. Like, those jobs are there, but Americans don't want them, and that's why undocumented workers are taking them. And so if you eat strawberries or you eat grapes, then shut the fuck up about whether undocumented workers are doing it, because nobody else is. All right. But setting that aside, once you start making it so that undocumented workers won't go to work to do it because they're terrified about getting deported, then what happens is you don't have grapes and you don't have strawberries because nobody's there to pick them. And then what happens is those farmers go out of business, and then those farmers are collecting unemployment instead of contributing to the economy. And then you have other people that are unemployed because the people that they were employing are also unemployed. And then those people in that local community aren't buying food at Dollar Tree or wherever. So then those businesses start going out of business. And so there's a ripple effect from the bottom up of all those lost businesses, all that lost income, all that lost revenue, higher unemployment, and whatnot. Just look at what happened in Alabama when they tried to clear out all the undocumented workers. It was a disaster for the economy, but it was a disaster for the bottom of the economy. And that's what Trump is doing with his, the undocumented workers are the scourge of humanity kind of thing, and deporting people that are just, like half tattoos or, Hispanic sounding last names. Like, is he, and so then you start looking at what he's doing with the military. He's trying to I was in the military. I spent 4.5 years in the military. Reagan was president when I went in. Bush 1 was president when I got out. I was a Democrat. when I was in Italy, I served in Italy for like 2.5 years. I served in Texas for 2 years. Went to Italy. And when I was in Italy, there was it was like a 50th anniversary of something from World War II. And like I think when Italy joined the Allies after they got rid of Mussolini, and then they joined the Allies, and there was some kind of battle. And so there are all the different Air Force bases in Italy, and I think there were some, like and the Italian military. They had this joint parade with George Bush and the Italian president at the time. I forget what his name was. Anyway, they picked 2 people from each squad, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the ones that was picked. And I got to go march in a parade for the president of the United States, who I did not vote for and who I did not really like. But I was still honored to march in a parade for my country, representing my country. And I got to meet the president, and he was a decent enough man to say hello and stuff. But my point is that, like, at that time, even if you were in the military, even if you didn't vote for the guy who was president, you still were able to respect the office. And I was able to respect the office because he respected me as a member of the military. He went around and he introduced himself to everybody, and he was nice. Like, I shook his hand, and I told him, sorry, I didn't vote for you. And he laughed. And it was a cordial exchange. He respected members of the military, whether they voted for him or not, whether or not they agreed with him. He respected their service, because I think he had served too. We don't have that anymore. We have a president who does not respect the members of the military, and he's instead trying to sow discord in the military. And I'm not sure what the exact percentages are, but his war on DEI, which is just stupidly infested, is like, basically, if you're a woman or you're a person of color, or you're just not a rich misogynistic white asshole, MAGA hat wearing dipshit, then you're like a DEI hire. And if you're a DEI hire, that means you didn't really deserve to be in the military. And so this could end up sowing animosity, as there are, and this is not a new thing. There were racist assholes while I was in the military too. Like, give you an example. I was when I was in basic training, there was this guy that he was in the bunk next to me. We had like bunks. We were both bottom bunks. And at least then, I don't know if it's still the case, but you had a personal locker, and you had your locker, and then you had like this personal drawer to your locker that had a key, and you wore your key around your neck, and you kept your personal locker locked, and you could keep personal stuff in there. You couldn't keep contraband in there. But the rule was they would not inspect your personal drawer unless it was unlocked. If it was unlocked, it was fair game. And this guy next to me left his drawer unlocked. And so one day, the TI opened up his drawer, and there were like these letters to his parents that he was getting ready to send, that talked about the guy on his other side and the guy above him, his bunkmate, who were black. And he was saying that he couldn't believe he had to sleep with Negroes, but he did not say Negroes. And he went on like this racist tirade with his with his parents about how he had to be with black people, and how terrible it was, and all of this stuff. And so they had something that we called the snake pit, and the snake pit was where the TI sat and ate dinner. And he was walking past the snake pit, and then the black TIs called him out, and they just hammered him for like half an hour. And trust me, you did not want to get stopped by the snake pit, because that was like, I got to go to the bathroom now kind of thing. And he got railed, and then he got run out, because that kind of thing was against Air Force policy in 1986 when I was in the Air Force, when I was in basic training. So it's not like this new thing that Biden invented. Anyway, he spent the next 2 weeks cleaning pigeon shit off the parade grounds with his toothbrush, and then he went home. He was just doing that while his paperwork processed. So the military has had a long-term low tolerance of racism, but there's still people that want to come in and that are racist. Well, now Donald Trump is saying that the racist, you can have your way, and everybody that's, a different race, well, you're a DEI hire and you're a piece of shit that shouldn't have gotten your job in the first place. So, that's where we're at with that. Do you think that right now, do you really think that right now there's more harmony in the military than there was under Biden? Because I don't. And I've been in the military. I do have a place to say something about that. I don't think that if I were a black person or a woman or a Hispanic person in the military right now, I would feel like more confident. I don't think I would feel okay. And as a white person, I would feel for my fellow airmen whom I had been serving with. Like, I served with black people and Hispanic people that I admired. I had, like, my two best NCOs were black. My worst NCO was a white guy that, like, didn't know how to work to save his life. I basically had to do his job for him. Anyway, I digress. The point is that he's undermining the mission of the military with all of these attacks on DEI. And he's undermining the economy with the tariffs and with the billionaire tax cuts. And when you look at everything he's doing, there is not a thing he does that doesn't hurt America, that doesn't actively hurt America, right? Like there was something else I wanted to bring up, but I forget it. With like Doge, the tax, not just the tax cuts, but the spending cuts. Have you noticed the spending cuts all seem to affect poor people, not just poor people here, but poor people around the world? There was an article I was reading in the New York Times that said that 1.2 million children will die around the world because they're not getting the vaccines that they would have gotten. 1.2 million. He killed over 1 million children, and it's like just a blip on the radar. But they're not wealthy children. They're poor African children, so they don't really count as people to him. They're from shithole nations. So there's a reason that we have helped these countries. And when I was in high school, my dad was a diplomat. I lived in one of those nations. And I actually was friends with people who were in the Peace Corps, which now Doge is looking at the Peace Corps. And I can't help but wonder if the Peace Corps is about to get nixed or get hit really hard. And then when you look at domestically, you got things like the Medicare and the Medicaid cuts went through with the Senate GOP vote yesterday. They're not just taxing the poor more, they're taking benefits from the poor as well. And they're just making it it's like they're not going to be happy until we return to serfdom or something. So I think there's going to be a lot of protests today. I am physically not healthy enough to protest, but if I were, I'd probably be doing it. So if you want to go protest, go protest. If you can't go protest, at least protest online, or just, this is really, I don't know that I've ever been at a point in my life. I would say my adult life, but I don't remember it from my childhood either. And I kind of went through Vietnam. To me, this is the lowest point of America in my life. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, or if you feel that way, but this is really, really sad where we're at. We are actively making America worse. We're actively undermining the heart of America. And we've got half of America giddy about it because they're owning the libs while they lose their 401ks. And they're going to have to work until they die. But at least they own the libs. They don't own anything but the libs, but they own the libs. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to jump on and vent a little bit because this really has me upset. I hope it has you upset too. Nobody's saying anything, but anyway, I hope you're as angry as I am. We need to be so angry right now. As a nation, we need to be angry. We're not doing well as a nation. It took him less than 3 months to completely destroy a good economy. What's he going to do in another 3 years and 9 months? How much more damage can he do? I don't want to find out, but I think we are. Anyway, thanks for joining. Just wanted to jump on and say a little bit today. Appreciate you guys. Bye.